I'd never seen a press conference like that in my entire life, and everything that I said back in 2008, journalism is dead. Trump probably buried it today, at least people's faith and confidence. If you didn't feel that journalism was dead after this election season where the media, every single media outlet was proven to collude with the Hillary Clinton campaign, I don't know what else. I don't know what else to tell you. Joining us now is former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Can you remember a single time the person that was arguing and shouting at the president-elect was Jim Acosta from CNN, and his last line was, "You're not appropriate." Do you ever remember Barack Obama ever being treated like this?
No. But of course, Barack Obama is the press's handpicked, loved candidate. There's a certain amount of yelling back and forth that Reagan used to get into, particularly Sam Donaldson. But I think a couple of things going on here. One is, Trump is deliberately trying to shrink and isolate CNN, and CNN is working hard to be worthy of that. This whole interlude of this, all of our listeners ought to think about this. The so-called intelligence leadership happens to have a 2-page document about which we know nothing, which alleges Trump might have done something which they cannot define. And apparently, in the only specific fact which has shown up, the Trump staff person who is allegedly in Prague meeting with Russians has never been to Prague, has never been in Czechoslovakia, has never been in Eastern Europe. Now, how hard was it for the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, somebody to call this guy and ask him? I mean, these things are not, and so what you're seeing is the collusion of the Obama political appointees in the intelligence community and the anti-Obama news media trying to create a totally false image. Talk about fake news. The old word for fake news, of course, is propaganda. This is just pure propaganda. And I think Trump is particularly angry about it because it is such blatant. By the way, I thought Reince Priebus did a great job this morning.
Did you see him on the Today Show? I saw him on the Today Show, and I saw him on Fox News. I mean, he was on fire.
Was tough. He was doing a great job, and it was the right job. I mean, I think when people go out of their way to lie about the next president of the United States, you owe it to them to hit them in the forehead and say, "Are you guys just nuts? We're not going to tolerate this. We don't have to put up with the news media being utterly, totally irresponsible and dishonest. We can call them out."
I was with you in 1994, and our friendship goes back even before then. And I remember how bad it became for you before you ever became speaker or sworn in as speaker in 1995. I mean, that Christmas, you were the Gingrich that stole Christmas. That Christmas, you were the one that was going to throw Granny off the cliff. You were the first victim of the Granny over the cliff narrative. You ended up balancing the budget. Creating huge economic growth, ending welfare as we know it. The era of big government, it began to shrink under your vision, and things for the country generally got better. But yet you had to go through all of this on your own without hardly any help.
Well, look, that's right. But as much as the media went after me, it was never as hostile as they have been to Donald Trump. It is astonishing. And by the way, I have to say, just in passing, I was with Congressman Mo Brooks this morning, who occupied your radio slot for 2 weeks before you came to Huntsville.
That's true.
And we were talking about you this morning. That really brought back a lot of memories. Basically a quarter century ago. It was amazing.
Believe it or not, this is my 30th year in radio. That was 1990, if you can believe that, 26 years ago. Well, I just let me ask you this. Do you remember? Let's backtrack a little bit here, because we've been friends for such a long time. Remember when I was vetting Obama, and I was saying about Obama, wait a minute, there's something not right here. A guy that, under the tutelage of Frank Marshall Davis, an avowed communist, and his Alinsky disciple worship and acorn activism and 20 years of black liberation theology in the Church of GD America, but he didn't know anything about Reverend Wright's real point of view, and starting his political career in the home of unrepentant terrorists. And I was hammering this, and you even thought I was being a little too hard. But the media, only one time did he ever get questioned about Bill Ayers. He sat on boards with him, started his political career in his house. He gave speeches with him, was friends with him. And the only question that came to him throughout the entire campaign was from George Stephanopoulos. And I literally hand-fed it to him the day before a debate. And his response was, he's just some guy in the neighborhood. Could you imagine if Trump had that history and how the media would have treated him?
Well, I think that since the media makes things up about Trump because they can't find the smoking gun, if they had anything comparable to what you're describing for Obama, they would have buried him. I mean, this is part of the frustration you're seeing, is that these guys are doing everything they can. They're still in a state of shock. I just gave a speech yesterday at Heritage. I'm giving another one tomorrow on the meaning of Trump and Trumpism and all that. And when you lay this stuff out...
By the way, you need to put these online. I was talking to Jim DeMint about your series, and by the way, I'm stuck following up on this. I'm like, great, following Newt Gingrich speaking. That sucks. That's the worst position. That is the worst position to ever be put in. It was horrible. Yeah. I'm like, really?
But in any event, they're actually available.
That was a compliment,
on YouTube, on Facebook. I know it was a compliment. It was a very weird compliment, though.
It was not a weird compliment. I don't want to follow you, and when you speak, it's like I'm dead.
But anyway, no, you're still pretty darn good, actually. I remember in Des Moines one time you were brilliant. Anyhow, here's the deal. What's fascinating is that you have the media still in a state of trauma, and I tried to explain in my speech yesterday. Remember, all the pollsters, all the consultants, all the left-wingers, which is, of course, 90% of the media, all were convinced until 9 or 10 o'clock Tuesday night Clinton was going to win in a landslide. And all of a sudden, it's just like being on the Titanic. I mean, all of a sudden they hit this iceberg called the American voters. Their ship starts sinking. And I think to this day, when they watch these hearings and they see, Rex Tillerson, and then they turn and they see, General Mattis, and then they turn and they see General Kelly, and just go down the list of people who are being, they watched Jeff Sessions do a great job yesterday. If you're the left-wing news media, you're thinking, I must be in a nightmare. This can't be the real world. How can I wake up and get out of this? I think that's part of what you see in their treatment of Trump, is that they are just literally almost deranged in being upset.
I wonder where we go from here. I know there has been talk, and I actually have suggested it, that I think this dog and pony show interview with the press secretary every day for the cameras, I got to be honest, I think this has to end, because it's going to get ugly and uglier every day. And, Donald Trump has other options. He can go directly to the American people, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and he'll reach as many, if not more, people.
George Washington went up to deliver a State of the Union and disliked the experience so much that every president sent up their State of the Union in writing until Woodrow Wilson, 120 years later. Trump has every right as president to interact with the American people any way he wants to. And if he decides to have very few press conferences, or if he decides to only have press conferences with people who represent local press outside of Washington, or if he decides to exclude the news channels and only do press conferences, with people who write for conservative publications, then the President of the United States is allowed to set the rules he wants to live by. Now, there are consequences to that, in that people decide whether or not they think it's a fair thing or whatever. But I do think that there's no reason. One of the lessons I learned very painfully in 1995, I tried doing a regular briefing on camera for the media, and it rapidly got to be a game of gotcha. And you could tell the media were spending half the morning preparing questions designed to either start a fight in the Republican Party, start a fight with the Senate, get me in trouble. And after about 3 weeks, we said it was too painful. We just couldn't keep doing it.
I remember I did an interview, and you did this as a personal favor to me. Roger Ailes asked me to fill in on a program called Talk Live, and you gave me an entire hour. It was Saturday night on CNBC, and that ultimately led to the job that I got at Fox. Our career paths have crossed backwards and forwards over these many years, and our friendship, of course, has gotten deeper over these years. But I can't believe you're the historian. There's always been sort of a contentious relationship with the White House and the news media. I don't think it's ever been this bad. Has it been? No. And and if you were advising Donald Trump, what would you tell him to do?
Well, I tell him to break up the whole monopoly game. I tell him to redesign the White House press room so that it is tied into Facebook, and it's tied into Skype, and it's tied into Twitter and into YouTube. I would tell him to take the White House press corps and move them over to the old executive office building so that they're not wandering around the White House feeling like they're just, privileged people. I would tell him to fundamentally change the rotation system they currently have, where a handful of elite reporters sit in the front row. There are 500 and some members of the White House press corps. I'd rotate all of them through there. I wouldn't allow a handful of people who have the kind of arrogance you saw at that news conference. I wouldn't let them be, the guys who get to dominate every day. And I'd say to them, look, if you're going to behave like that, you're likely to be back in the press room, in April.
Does it bother you that John McCain is now admitting he played a pretty central role in disseminating these bogus reports by handing it over to the FBI in December?
No, I think if I got a report that I didn't know whether it was real or not, I would feel an obligation to turn it over to an appropriate authority.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't bother me. I don't think John went out and spread it. I think he said, I got this report and I handed it over. Well, I think that is a citizen's duty. If you run across a report that says so and so might be influenced by the Russians or the Chinese or the North Koreans or the Iranians, you should turn it over to the appropriate authority. What makes me angry is, how does it end up as a 2-page addendum and then get leaked to the news media when it's all junk? I mean, they've had all of that time. If John gave it to them in December, look how many months they've had. They've had a year to track down and say, this is baloney, which apparently it is. I mean, just based on the one story of the guy who met with the Russians in Prague, who's never been in Czechoslovakia or in the Czech Republic nowadays.
Oh.
That is so blatantly stupid.
Well, Michael Cohen's going to join us at the top of the next hour. My monologue on TV tonight, my opening monologue, is going to be journalism is dead, and I'm going to bring up the history of how it has failed the American people. And then, of course, you're going to be joining us, Laura Ingraham, tonight, Michael Cohen tonight. So we'll see you then. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, as always.
Right.
And we haven't even gotten to the first 100 days, and it's more interesting than it's ever been. Thank you.
Take care.